Hello, ladies and gentlemen, everybody in between and beyond. My name's Jordy Coleman. You can call me Ginger Wolf. And I wanted to do a little thing. So, for any of you who might not be aware of this, or for those of you who are aware of it, I am an absolute huge fanatic for stand up comedy. So, I decided I wanted to do a live stream about once a month, just to kind of be like, let's check out some comedians. And I thought the best place to start would probably be Comedy Central's top 100 lists. Back in, I believe, 2004, Comedy Central released their top 100 best stand up comedians. And I decided that would be a good place to start, even though some of the comedians on there aren't technically stand up comics, and other ones are so old that there are no actual live videos of them performing. So, with that being said, let's start off with Gallagher. Gallagher did pass away not that long ago. I believe it was just this past year. I'm just going to double check that. Hang on just one quick second. No, he passed away in 2022, November of 2022. So, now for some people, you should be able to hopefully see my screen. I'm not sure if you are. I'm still new to the whole live stream thing. But for some people, a lot of them claim Gallagher was the best stand-up comedian of all time. I do not agree with that. That's not to say... There we go. We should be on the screen now. He's complicated. He was one of the first big names when it comes to the world of prop comedy, and I don't necessarily dislike prop comedy by any stretch of the imagination. But he is a person that it seems that he has become, or he became a little jaded, even kind of at the midpoint, I guess, of his career. He had a lot of credits. He performed at the Comedy Store and the Ice House, which are two of the biggest stand-up comedy clubs in the world. He was on The Tonight Show back when Johnny Carson was hosting, even though Carson himself did not particularly like prop comics, and Gallagher responded to that by basically saying, well, he was a magician. What's the difference between a magician? And there's plenty of differences between the two things, to be completely honest. I'm not going to get into them here. But yeah, he just in general kind of seemed really jaded. Like I would see a lot of interviews of him kind of griping about how he never got a talk show or he never got a sitcom, and he didn't get this and he didn't get that. But the dude was performing in some cases like 300 shows in the course of a year, which is absolute insanity. Like, anybody who's working 300 days in a row deserves a goddamn medal, let alone performing 300 days out of the year, because it does take a lot out of you. And he doesn't strike me as a dumb guy by any stretch of the imagination. He really doesn't. He was a chemical engineer. He does have a chemical engineering degree, and he minored in English literature, so he knew a thing or two. And some people say that his material in and of itself was relatively intelligent. And yes and no. There are some cases, like when he talks about the English language and stuff like that, he even brought up some things that I brought up when I was younger about how dumb the English language is, like consonants that are silent, like P and pterodactyl and pneumonia and stuff like that. And he went through a whole lot of it. But this is more about his content as a stand-up than him as a person, even though, like I say, in a lot of things he was not a great person. And I can get into that at another time if you so desire. But yeah, he was kind of a dick. He actually even kind of ruined one of his own interviews when he was trying to promote some shows. I believe it was Amos and Andy that he was on, and they basically were just like, just get the hell out of here, man. So, for better or for worse, he was a not bad stand up comic. Again, for better or for worse. So, with everything being said, I think it's time for us just to get into the special in and of itself. So, we're going to sit back, relax, watch it, and then afterwards, I'm going to kind of do a little bit of my perspective of a breakdown of his personal material. So, without further ado, let's enjoy. And hello, I am back. so, so that was a lot funnier than I remember that one, to be completely honest. And that being said, though, there's a couple things. First of all, when he was doing his little sign out thing, still to this day, Bob Saget still has the best, like, before I get out of here kind of thing. His was something akin. I might be slightly misremembering this, but his was before I get out of here, I'd like to put a tissue box on my lap and give you guys a puppet show. That's still one of my favorite kind of like sign outs kind of thing. And I do appreciate that because this was originally put on TV in 1980. So it does kind of show the origin of the Sledge-O-Matic here, where it was the whole concept of him smashing watermelons was meant to be kind of a play off of the old and even current infomercials for what infomercials still exist at this point in time. And it became his gimmick. And as we've seen throughout the years of gimmicks, like the probably the most famous gimmick of all time when it comes to uh, comics with gimmicks is Jeff Foxworthy's redneck jokes. And it can be a great way to get your footing and get going on some things to have a great have a great gimmick. The problem becomes when your gimmick becomes what you're known for, and that's pretty much all you're known for. Um, Gallagher himself is coined as a prop comic, and as we just saw, that was he didn't have a shit ton of props. Like he wasn't pulling out props like Carrot Top, where literally his entire act is props. So, excuse me. It's it was actually really cool to watch this with you guys. I also like the venue that he was performing at as well. I'm gonna mute this for a sec. Um, because it's a nice, cool middle ground between a comedy club type of setting, but also a studio. By the way, one thing that actually does kind of annoy me when it comes to Gallagher, he did say a couple of times that he had the first televised comedy special. Not true on two factors. Number one, Carlin's first HBO special was first put out in 1977. So yeah, no, he did not have the first televised comedy special. Also, I believe by that point, Rodney's Place had started. I think Rodney's Place started in '79, which was Rodney Dangerfield's televised comedy thing. For Canadian viewers, and even if you're American, you can look it up. But we used to have a show called Comedy at Club 54, and it was a weekly show. And I've heard rumblings that it might even be coming back with the original host as well. And if that is the case, not only do I hope they get the original host, hope they get some of the older acts for it too, because that would be pretty fucking sweet. I'm not gonna lie. There was also another thing with the balloons near the end, but also at the beginning when he was like throwing candy out and stuff like that. Um, Whatever happened to entertainers just throwing shit out into the crowd? Like even like rock bands and stuff like that used to throw like merch and stuff into the crowd. Like it doesn't have to be excuse me, it doesn't have to be a whole lot. It can just be, a couple of hats, a shirt or two, that kind of thing. Like in The Simpsons, there's the episode where Maud Flanders died, where she gets hit with the t-shirt cannons. You don't really see that kind of stuff anymore. But there's a couple of jokes that I kind of wanted to do a little bit of a breakdown here.
We're here to just talk about the world and go back and forth on the street here and have a couple drinks. Not everybody has a drink.
Hang on.
How come you don't have? What is your name?
My name's Larry Spector.
You're real proud of that, ain't you?
Oh yeah, so in the beginning here, he kind of does it a little bit throughout.
Who's sitting behind him?
But something that I feel, at least you don't see it in specials. I see it in clubs because, of course, I'm a stand-up, so I, see this all the time. But you don't see a lot of comics in their specials interacting with the audience too much. That's not something you really see. And granted, I understand when you're in a big theater and stuff like that, it is very hard to see a lot of chunks of your crowd and stuff like that. It's all about how the lighting is. But it harkens back to older days, and also there are some comics that have such good like audience participation stuff in their material. Like Dave Attell is a great example. If you watch any of Dave Attell's crowd work, it is amazing to watch some of Dave Attell's crowd work, because there's just something about the way he interacts with his audience, and he's very dirty as well. He's not afraid to kind of like, get into the dirtier side of making fun of people. And I like how, see, I mentioned before about him, Johnny Carson wasn't a fan of prop comics, but yet Johnny Carson started off as a magician, so what kind of becomes, what's the difference? And in this interaction here, where, yeah, you see this is a perfect example of the difference between a stand-up comic and a magician, and this is like the middle ground of it, where as a magician, when you pull somebody up on stage to help you with a trick, whether it's a card trick, coin trick, whatever the case may be, sawing a woman in half, part of the fun is getting the audience in on your act. And I love that kind of feel, and that's essentially what this is. The difference is you're setting up an expectation for somebody, where with this you kind of have at least a little bit of an idea of what's going to happen, because he's talking about a drink and stuff like that, so somehow a drink is going to get involved in this situation. Where with a magician, your expectation is a magic trick. You're just not quite sure how it's presented, because with a prop comic, and again, not technically fully a prop comic in his case, but with a prop comic, you're going to get a prop, and that's more or less going to be it. But with a magician, even if you've seen exactly that same trick before, how it's presented is a very, very different thing. And I think that is a big key.
Well, who's this? We need some more drinks in here.
Let's fast forward a little bit more here.
People are always telling you that. They'll tell you to eat before you go to the grocery store. That way you don't buy so much. That don't work with the liquor store, does it?
Oh yeah, the part where he's talking about the whole eat before you go to the grocery store. That way you don't buy so much, because the idea is you're less hungry, so things seem less appealing and that kind of thing. This is a really good example of a very basic concept turned into a pretty damn decent joke. And it's true because it's for those of us who tend to like the devil's sauce, as it were, that does become a factor of, you know, once you start drinking other drinks that you don't normally drink start looking appealing. Food doesn't do that kind of thing. You've never been sitting there eating a burger and going, you know, what'd be good with this is some broccoli. You know, that's something you just don't really see. And by the way, like I said, some of these jokes were not, especially when he was talking about the whole the gay thing near the end there. Yes, keep in mind this is a product of its time. It's the '80s, and also it's Gallagher. Gallagher had this weird ism where he cared what people thought of him, but he also didn't care what people thought of him, in a very weird sense. I was reading a thing about him being on stage and actually getting mad at the audience and he actually called the audience stupid because all they wanted to see was him smash a watermelon. And again, that's that was his finale, that was his finisher that he had. That wasn't his whole act. I understand the frustration, but at the same time, you brought it on yourself. That was what you became. You know, you can go through a period of time where you reinvent yourself. You know, Madonna did that probably a dozen times. George Carlin did that about 4 or 5 times. Um, Even Andrew Dice Clay, he realized, you know, at one point he had to kind of change a little bit of what how he was looking at things, and you know, he's not as machismo as he once was, I guess would be the way of putting it. He's still a macho type of guy. He's just not the same level he was back in the 80s and the 90s.
No, you go there drunk, you buy it. But that's just the reason that you should eat it.
Yeah, the hot dog in the pants thing. That I'm actually kind of impressed how well he was able to hide that in those pants. Because with the I can't hide shit in my pants, and I usually like baggy pants. So the fact that he was able to hide a hot dog in a banana peel is actually kind of impressive, especially with how tight his pants were. Hang on.
Gallagher.
Oh yeah, and this little bit here where he's chatting with the guy.
Well, you're a cigar smoker, ain't you? Don't look around, ain't a woman.
This is the type of thing that wouldn't really go over too great.
Good name. Gallagher.
See, see that interaction right there. The whole, you know, what's your name, Chris? What's your name, Gallagher? That that is one of the. And don't worry about if you missed it. I'll post a link of the special on my channel, and I'll send you one as well. But this particular part where he's talking to this guy, and the guy literally asks him, he's like, "What's your name?" It's one of those like we don't think about how we enter. Like, how many times have you gone into a doctor's office? The doctor walks in, you know, you're like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And he's like, "Fine, how are you?" And you're like, "I'm good," without realizing I'm probably not good. I'm in a doctor's office, but it's such a reflex to respond that way. And at least for me, this is the type of thing, like, you can't plan that type of interaction with somebody in the audience. And this is part of the reason why the audience interaction part of specials that have kind of gone missing for the past probably 20 years now, maybe even longer. It, it's for me, it's I really miss that because you a lot of times when you're watching a comedy special, you're not seeing somebody in live where you might actually see them interacting with the crowd and doing a little bit of the crowd work and stuff like that. And crowd work is like one of the things I tell people when they start getting into stand up, when they kind of break that 5 minute cherry, as I refer to it, when you're not just doing little 5 minute sets, is work on interacting with the audience. Because when you bring the audience into your world and they're interacting with you and it's not just a TV show, it's a beautiful thing. Now, hang on. There was another part here. Oh yeah, if you had another drug, you'd need another hand. That was also a really good point of. I really enjoyed that. I think the live stream might be a bit of a issue, so I do apologize for that. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I'm not 100% sure, but it looks like it's back on order. I actually have my live stream going off of my phone as well, so I can focus on one screen at a time, just to make things a little easier for myself.
And smoking a cigar on top of that. How can you handle these two things? Oh. And drinking in the other hand. Damn. If you had another hand, you'd need another drug, wouldn't you?
Especially now, this is a joke that just would not, plain and simply, would not happen now, just because you can't smoke in bars and restaurants and stuff like that. And I legitimately do love jokes that are snapshots of yesteryear, of things that we just don't really think about, like because things have become so normalized now that we don't think about, like, oh yeah, we used to be able to smoke in bars and restaurants and stuff.
You ever wonder what it'd be like if you did have another hand? You ever hear people say, I only got two hands? Where in the hell would you put another one? Put one right out the middle. That way... Well, that way you could lean forward in the bathroom and use both hands, couldn't you?
That was also a pretty good one. Being able to...
Or if you're at a cocktail party, you could carry your food and have your drink right there and be good. I'm always thinking about things like that because I don't believe the human body is perfect. It isn't perfect. Take your nose, for example. You think it's a good idea to put a wet, grainy thing like that upside down over your mouth?
That was also talking about just the human body as a whole is actually, I like, there's also a part in here, the part that I'm actually trying to find is when he was talking about having sex and the woman would take a single hair off of his head.
Thing I wanted to do. Do y'all believe that? No. Actually, she'd let anybody do anything they
Yeah,
wanted
this
to
part
do.
right here.
Everybody knew her. She was weird, but very fair. After you do her, she'd do you back. That's fair, isn't it? All she'd ever do, though, is pluck a single hair from the top of your head for her scrapbook.
Yeah, that's the line.
Moved away from that neighborhood. I was about, 14, 15, about 15, I think.
See,
What about 15?
this right here. Now, this is something because I talk a lot about my hair in my show. So this right here is actually something that harkens a lot to me. In a different facet, because he's talking about because he's going bald and everything. I talk about the facet that I'm a ginger and stuff like that, and I have long hair. One of my favorite jokes that I put in that has nothing to do with the fact that I'm a ginger. It's the fact that I have long hair, and I always do the whole, guys, if you like your woman to have long hair, grow your own hair out for a little bit, just to see, the trials and tribulations she has to deal with in maintaining that long hair. And ladies, if you like a man with a beard, try growing your own. Find out how hard it is. And then I also talk about how, like, and this is not a joke when I say this, by the way. But I thought it was funny when it happened to me one day. Is like almost every single day when I have a shower, I will wash my ass and I will find a stray hair. And I feel the stray hair there, but I can't find it until for some reason when I'm washing. And I always say, and guys, we only have one crack below the waist. I can see a problem for the ladies, is all I'm saying.
I think. You remember her a little bit, don't you?
Let's see. There's actually another part in here, too.
Well, you like that damn joke. You know why a bird is so ugly? You would be too if your pecker was between your eyes.
Yeah. Also, the other thing is the fact that he gets pigeonholed as a prop comic is actually really interesting because he does do a lot of observational humor, and that's really where a lot of this kind of comes from. But he also does a lot of setup and punchline jokes, and he doesn't get grouped together with guys like Mitch Hedberg and Stephen Wright, you know? Again, I'm not saying I'm the biggest fan of Gallagher. I'm just trying to give him the fair dues that I feel somebody who is in the world of comedy for decades upon decades deserves, in my opinion. Granted he was doing most of his acts at like fairgrounds and stuff like that, but still, that's still. Oh, I guess this will be a little bit of a somber moment because I don't want to end on this moment too, but close to the end of his life, he was actually going through some serious financial issues and he was selling off a lot of his props and stuff like that. And yeah, it was actually, yeah, it wasn't great. So. Let's see if I can find. Oh yeah, when he starts busting out his props for the first time here. Let's see, there we go. This was funny. I like the fact that he made a joke about it too. Yeah, classified. That's a very smart joke. I really like that one.
Does not match my pants. Nothing matches my pants.
And there, right there is another joke about how he looks. So he was very self-aware that he was not the best-looking type of guy.
Pyramid to sharpen the wit. Pretty handy, huh? Maybe in the future people
And
will be dressing like this.
That's something that I've actually heard for a lot of years is the whole concept of pyramid power.
It's a good hat, though. Most hats, you put them down on a chair, people sit on them. Doesn't happen with this.
Where's the... Yeah.
People that don't like smokers. You just kind of wear this medallion smoker arm.
The funny thing with this one, I'm not gonna play the beep because that was very high pitched, and I'm wearing headphones, so I'm gonna avoid the beep on that one. But in all honesty, as much as this would be kind of a stupid joke and that would be annoying, I would actually far prefer this than those people that walk up to you when you're trying to, have a smoke or something, and you're outside of a bar or whatever, and you get that kind of shit. I would actually prefer this, because at least this is kind of clever. You're just being an asshole for the sake of being an asshole. Oh yeah, and the Gallagher dolls.
Why do they do this?
I like yeah.
Look, it had a car neck. Had a
I'm
guest host,
very
there was
much
Troy.
guessing that this particular joke was before he kind of had his gripe
Not worth filming. Why did this get
with
thrown
Johnny
away?
Carson. And I love this.
The
This
longer the
actually
bite, the
made me
cooler the
think
fruit.
of
Oh, I know. You can't
if
let
any
this
of you
one
are
get-
familiar with the rap group Cypress Hills. A lot of times when they're touring, shout out to Cypress Hill, by the way, fucking love that band. But that reminds me of when they go on tour and stuff like that. They actually have these gigantic bongs that they bring out on stage and actually smoke out of on stage. And it usually takes like a full pull just to get the smoke to the mouthpiece. So it's pretty ridiculous. I would actually love to see, just because the two, when I think of pot smoking rappers, the two that pop into my mind are Cypress Hill and Snoop Dogg. I want to see a crossover or a feature verse or anything between the two of them so fucking bad, but I digress. And I do like the fact that he kind of pulled out a prop and just didn't even comment on it. That, in and of itself, the dustpan and broom, that would be such a good thing to actually have.
Damn.
And I love the 12-string guitar. That was pretty funny. It kind of makes me think of Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny, where Kyle has the two-legged guitar. And the scratch after "What Do You Get When You Fall in Love" was bang on as well.
You know, you can tell how much
But I thought
money
this
a
part
woman
was
has
pretty
in
good,
her purse.
where he's talking about the
What is your name? What do you do for a
purse.
living? You make pottery.
This
Okay,
too.
throw that back.
I actually, when this part came up, I actually, because I have seen this special before. When the ping pong paddle thing came out, I actually thought to myself, you know, I wonder if he ever tried to patent that and actually put it in stores. Because that actually seems like it would have been a toy that my parents would have got me, to be completely honest. Yeah, it's fine. I like playing with myself.
Better. Get behind your car.
Oh yeah, and the car part. Yeah.
I'm driving.
I do. This really, really, really showed the
In my car.
the era this was in. That kind of snap editing
You're on a
right
TV
there.
Show, you get your wishes, don't you?
That
This
was
helps me to get into the mood
like
talking about
that was
driving.
such
You know,
that's such a
you need to
product
be
of
a
the
different
time. If it
person
was
when you get in your car.
nowadays, it would
You know, you act different.
they'd be using
polite and
editing
everyday life, and then
software
you get behind
to make
your
it
car.
so that he was perfectly in place and everything like
I'm
that.
driving. You know what
And
I mean? You just get impatient when you're in your car.
and see, this is kind of an almost an antithesis of what most people think of when they think of a prop comic, because usually the prop in and of itself is the joke, where in this case he's using the prop to tell jokes, which is something that's quite different from most people how they approach prop comedy. You know, when I think of prop comedy, the first thing that comes to mind, there's two things that comes to mind, and one is um, both of them are Carrot Top, but one is um, Tom Cruise getting married, and because Tom Cruise is short, he needed platform shoes. And instead of giving him platform shoes, Carrot Top put little stilts on his shoes so that he looked the same height as his wife. I thought that was pretty funny. But the other one is in the roast of Flavor Flav. He put rear view mirrors on a bong so when you're smoking you can watch out for cops. That both of those are good jokes. Don't get me wrong, but this is a different kind of thing in prop comedy. This is somebody taking a prop and using it to highlight the jokes as opposed to the prop itself being a joke.
I'm down on ignorance and
And I know, yeah, when he was pulling the stuff out of the car. I, when
My
this, no,
rings,
hang on one sec, hang on.
my plugs and points.
Yeah, that part, in all honesty, if this was being made today, this is supposed to be Gallagher uncensored, and he did swear a little bit, and of course in the 80s at that point, you know, a little bit of swearing is a big deal. But with this, if this was made now, I guarantee you that would be butt plugs. He wouldn't have sink plugs. I guarantee you it would be butt plugs. And there may have even been a conversation of whether or not he wanted to use butt plugs for it too. And then the training bra for a very stupid person.
I
Yeah.
wish this was gone.
See, that was a
Well,
yeah, that little edit there too. That one was actually worse.
so
That was far worse.
I think I got you people warmed up good enough. You seem to be pleasant. I'm gonna.
I don't know where it is exactly. This is where he starts doing the Sledge-O-Matic thing. But there's a part in it where he's talking about trans people, and I'm not 100% sure. In as much as he does not talk about, he would bring up the fact that he had the first comedy special on cable TV, which is not true. Again, HBO George Carlin in '77. One thing he would have been able to talk about is I think he may have been, at least as far as a TV, for sure for a TV special, but he may have actually been one of the first comics to actually talk about trans people, which is insane. Like, again, 1980s. That was barely a thing that was even whispered at the time, and you have a comic talking about it. The only other comic that I have ever seen talk about it before like 95 to 99, somewhere in there. I'd have to go through a bunch of specials to see if I'm accurate with that. But the only other comic up until very recently, I'll phrase it that way, that I remember seeing talk about transvestites is Andrew Dice Clay. So a little credit where credit's due. And he did actually bring up kind of an interesting point. He's like, maybe there's a woman inside of me and she just happens to be a lesbian. Kind of a funny joke, and I do appreciate the fact that even though at this time transphobia was crazy and all over the fucking place, he wasn't doing it in a mean way. At least I didn't feel it was a mean way. You know, I'm not a trans person, so it's not really my call to make, but it really didn't feel like it was like an aggressive or attack or anything like that. And then, of course, he, talked about being gay and stuff like that, and it's like, again, 80s and 90s, product of its time. That was something that pretty much, even into the 2000s, like, I know I've talked a lot about Bob Saget. He is one of my favorites. But Bob Saget has a thing, granted, for him it's a little bit more relevant because he was talking, hypothetically speaking, a lot of people have accused that Danny Tanner was gay. And I don't think so personally, and he didn't think so either. But he liked to make jokes about it because that was the type of person Bob Saget was. He was fine making jokes about himself. He was fine making jokes about shows that he had been on and stuff like that. So that you don't see a lot of gay jokes anymore. And I think that overall that's a good thing, but it also takes away the discussion of gay rights from a focal point, and that's something that I think is bad. That part of the reason why I have such a love and respect for stand-up comedy in and of itself is because it keeps things in the public sphere. The more a comedian is talking about something, whether it's good or bad, and there's a lot of bad. There is a lot of bad, like, comedians that will talk negatively about gay people, talk negatively about trans people, and that itself is not a good thing. But them talking about it and bringing it into the public consciousness and making people actually have to think about it is a very good thing, which is also part of the reason why I love and respect comics like Lewis Black who talk about politics and stuff like that. It's, you know, educating people and giving people more of a broader idea of what may be going on. And if you doubt it, we all have access to the internet. Chances are, especially if you're watching a comedy special in this day and age, you can do a little bit of research to find out if that's accurate. And even if it is accurate, it doesn't even necessarily mean that it's accurate for everybody that falls under that particular umbrella. But that's enough of a little bit of a rant there. I just wanted to kind of point that out. Now the Sledge-O-Matic. Here we go. I love the hat with the handle so that he could do the spinning. That's a brilliant idea.
One should pay particular attention because the amazing Mass Tool Corporation, a subsidiary of Fly-By-Night Industries, has entrusted who? Me, to show you the handiest and the dandiest kitchen tool you've ever seen. And don't you want to know how it works? Yeah! Well,
so you can see that's the Sledge-O-Matic he's working on here. Also the applause side while he was doing it. That is such a dumb, funny joke. Like, normally I wouldn't appreciate a comic doing that, but the way he specifically draws attention to it, that in and of itself clearly was also supposed to be part of the joke of everything. So I appreciate that. And the fact that it's, you know, quote unquote, a live studio audience just kind of adds a little bit. It's a flavor shot, you know. This is an example of, even though in certain settings a certain joke, a certain thing, not even a certain joke, a certain thing will take away. In this particular case, I feel like it adds to it. And of course, just going through that. And near the end, the lasso thing was actually, I thought that was pretty good. I don't even know if I still have it, but I used to actually have one of those hand crank screwdrivers. Those things are super handy. So, and I like how he was like aiming the watermelon at the audience too. That was actually, speaking of that, that was actually something I did want to bring up. I can't remember which comic was talking about it, but one comic was talking about Gallagher performing like a week or 2 weeks or something like that before he was performing at a venue. And it was a giant theater, beautiful theater. And one of the stagehands that was like on duty to kind of show him around the place before he was performing there, showing him around so that he didn't get lost on the way to the stage or anything like that. The guy pointed up at the ceiling and was just like, "You see that up there?" And it took the other comic a little bit of time to kind of focus in on it, and he goes, "What the hell is that? That's not part of the ceiling." And he goes, "Yeah, Gallagher was here like last week, and that's still on the ceiling." So if you're gonna put a gimmick into your act, all I'm saying is it might be beneficial to have it a little less messy than what Gallagher did. Personally speaking, I think my gimmick is the opposite of messy, which is fire. Because you pretty much just use fire to clean things up, don't you? Whether it's trash, dead bodies, you know, you make your pick. And then here where he's talking about just stealing stupid shit. That was that was pretty good.
is that all just the wires? Is just a cosmetic consideration, or am I getting sound properly?
I wonder too, the part where his microphone kind of messed up there. I wonder if that was intentional or not. Because a lot of comics will do stuff like that to kind of like, it's like a little bit of a fourth wall break where it's just like, let's do something a little bit differently. Let's, you know, play with this a little bit and see what's going on. You know, see if the audience is still paying attention, that kind of thing. And especially in comedy, that's a really important thing to kind of check in on the audience once in a while, make sure they're still paying attention. Especially now. Yeah, I heard him cutting out too. But I wonder if it was planned or not because it wasn't too bad. It was noticeable, but it wasn't anything that was, you know, all I'm saying is whether or not the mic issue was planned or not. Kind of the way he reacted to it makes me think it probably wasn't, but I have no idea what was going on, how Gallagher's head works, so maybe it was. I mean, the guy literally went around the corner and came out and started tossing balloons into the audience. So, oh yeah, there was, speaking of the balloons, hang on. Yeah, this part here.
Like, dig it. Now, if man did have a tail, I wonder would it be legal to leave it out or would you have to tuck it in?
I thought this was actually pretty funny, especially considering I do actually have a friend who does do like balloon animals and stuff like that. Not technically part of their act, but they also do stuff for like kids' parties and stuff like that. And one of the things they do is balloon twisting. And this kind of made me think of that, but it also, of course, made me think of furries. And personally speaking, I like furries. I think they're pretty sweet, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what I think about it because whatever you do, as long as you're not hurting anybody, if it makes you happy, it makes you happy. And I'm not going to try and take away something that makes somebody happy that's not fucking hurting anybody. So it doesn't make a goddamn piece of difference. Alright, I think that might be pretty much everything. Yeah, this part where he was that
There
was,
you are.
yeah.
Are you a connoisseur of comedy? You're not.
So, the funny thing is, so I wouldn't technically refer to this as dealing with a heckler. Because you can go online and there are so many, this comedian dealing with a heckler, boss comedian dealing with a heckler, that kind of thing. I wouldn't technically categorize this as dealing with a heckler, but that being said, this would work. If you were him, this would work on dealing with a heckler. It really would. Plus, let's face facts because, it was happening before the infamous Chris Rock Will Smith slap. But there was been a thing of some comedians getting assaulted on stage. There's actually, you can look this up. There's a Louis C.K. clip where some guy fucking walks up on stage and punches him out, and it's like, ow, that's absolutely insane. And truth be told, some people are just assholes like that. But if you think about it, who's gonna walk up on stage with a guy who's got that giant ass sledgehammer? So that's pretty much like that's a little, if there's a comedian watching this and you want to, incorporate a weapon into your act. It might prevent it. I don't know. I'm not saying actually attack anybody, but I'm just saying people know they might second guess it. And I think that might be pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about it. I do appreciate the...
Two big babies.
Oh, yeah. Where he was talking about the infomercials and stuff like that. That was actually really good. And again, another product of the era because you wouldn't see somebody talking about this kind of stuff nowadays because we don't really have infomercials. And even for, the couple that might still exist, honestly, the last infomercial I did actually see, that this will give you a perspective as to how long ago it was was actually Peter Popoff, for those of you who actually remember Peter Popoff. Oh my god. The fake faith healer dude that got exposed on Johnny Carson by James Randi. Kind of gives you a brief synopsis. But he's still out there, even way after that. He's still out there. He was selling like this miracle spring water stuff. And his infomercials still are like still snapshots of the 80s and the 90s. It's the same thing. You know, it and I hate that prick. How the fuck he's not in jail at this point absolutely is insane. But yeah, that being said,
gonna have no problem with your little pick.
uh, oh yeah, the instant replay of the Sledge-O-Matic hitting the watermelons. Let's try to get that. Here it is. Now, this part, and this is kind of the part that I'll end on, but this is an like I like the fact that they did an instant replay, but it does make me think of there is a magician, and you can actually catch his special, and I will do a let's watch or a let's laugh of his special as well. But there's a magician by the name of Harry Anderson, and I've already kind of set that one aside. I do want to do Comedy Central's top 100 comedians kind of in reverse order, but Harry Anderson's not on there. To be fair, magician, not technically a comedian, but that's the one I'm doing for my birthday. I've already decided, so keep an eye out for that in December. But that being said, there's a part in it where I'm not going to give anything away, but there's a magic trick he does, and they actually show part of it in reverse to make it look even better than it already did. Which is a positive and a negative when it comes to the world of magic, because if you're doing it on TV and then somebody sees you live and they don't quite see what they're seeing, they might not appreciate it as much, but it will also generate a little more interest into something somebody's doing. So I've said that. Now, the last thing that I would like to talk about when it comes to Gallagher is that I actually recently saw Carrot Top get asked about. I don't know if the video I saw was a recent video or not. But because I can't remember the date on it, but he was talking about Gallagher wanting to meet with him and basically spending an hour yelling at him because he was mad that Carrot Top had stolen his act. And then he was even more mad that not only had Carrot Top stolen his act, but he stole the stupid part because apparently he was such a smart comedian. And I'm not saying that he has a lot of dumb jokes in his act, because he doesn't. Like, a lot of his jokes are very clever and very well written. But he's not George Carlin, he's not Bill Burr, he's not Bill Hicks. He wasn't Lewis Black, which you can see Lewis Black's kind of sitting there. By the way, if you haven't seen this special, check it out. It is a fucking hilarious special. It's his first special after the whole COVID thing. Highly recommend it. Love it. Really, really funny. And another one that'll be eventually on my Let's Laugh series. But you know, like Gallagher thought a lot higher about himself than, and there's two factors. I do feel like he did deserve more credit than what he did because, like I did say, he has very well thought out, very well executed jokes. At the same time, though, he had this perspective like he deserved a lot more than what he ended up getting. Very full of himself and that kind of thing. And having an ego like that, just plain and simply, is not a great thing. there's really no other way to put it, is that having an ego like that where you think you deserve everything just because maybe you've been around. It's the same kind of thing with Melly Mel versus Eminem, that little diss that was going on. It's kind of the new versus the old kind of thing. I've been around forever, so I deserve this. And it's like, that's not how it works. You still, even if you've been around forever, you still have to work for something. If you want it, you have to work for it. And like I said, he had a kind of a bug up his ass about the fact that he never got his own talk show and he never got his own sitcom and that kind of thing. But let's be realistic here. When we're talking about comics that have had their own sitcoms, Ray Romano, George Lopez, Jeff Foxworthy, Bill Engvall. There's a ton of comedians that have had their own sitcoms. And in all honesty, and Everybody Hates Chris, my personal favorite. But what of your acts do you take and put into a sitcom? How do you, all of these guys are storytelling comedians that tell stories about their family and stuff like that. That's easy enough. Put that put that on film, put it on TV, you have a sitcom. What about his act would work as a sitcom? That's the question that I have. And I don't have an answer for that because I can't think of anything that would actually work in a sitcom. So, with that being said, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you to everybody who came to the live stream to check this out. I will be doing this the first Thursday of every month. And if you want to know what the schedule is, I am, with the exception of December, I am going in reverse order, starting at 100 and ending at number 1, through Comedy Central's top 100 stand-up comedians. So that should give you an idea of what my schedule is going to be. I do have to be a little bit cautious with that because not all the comedians have comedy specials that I can use like this. And I am streaming these directly. Almost all of them are old enough where they are on YouTube. And if they're not, then I guess I'm kind of SOL on that one. But thank you all so very much for joining me today. I do hope you have a fantastic night. I hope you enjoyed the live stream. And, as always, don't do anything I wouldn't do. You should probably stay away from most of the things I would do. And until next time, take care.